Welcome back to the Quadcast. Today we're talking about proper rest for success. Uh, I want to explore some simple but effective tenets and tools to optimize your training and to help you get better performance and results quicker. Uh, in general, the things that we will be covering in this presentation: intensity, rest periods, and adaptation. About me, my name is Sean Brown, owner of Empirical Fitness. I'm a cosplayer. These are all the different ways you can contact me and reach me, including my Instagram, my Facebook, and obviously you can find me on YouTube. So, things we're going to go over in this presentation. I'm going to give you a quick overview of strength and conditioning principles. I'll define what an adaptation is when it comes to strength conditioning and results and training and so on and so forth. Then we'll do a quick delve into why rest matters, and then I'm going to give you guys some recommendations on training for various intensities and various outputs for adaptations and what rest periods should be accompanied with them. So strength conditioning principles, we have frequency, volume, intensity, density, and progressive overload. These are the majority of principles as a strength conditioning coach that can be manipulated in order to expedite the results for you and that you're trying to get. So first, your frequency, how often you're training. This could be, if you're training 5 days a week, 6 days a week, this could be the fact that you're training multiple times a day, 6 days a week, and or multiple times a day, but just do it 2 times a week. Uh, it's how we essentially spread apart the next thing, which is volume. Essentially, if you have, let's say you have this goal, you're trying to get to it quickly, so you have a lot of work to do. So we spread across your work across multiple days. If we condense too much work into one day, you end up getting fatigued, burned out, overtrained. It's not good. Um, Frequency, in addition to spreading out volume, also very good for skill acquisition. The more frequently you perform an activity, an exercise, a sport, a skill, the more likely you are to improve at it. Volume, once again, this is the work that you're doing. Often calculated if we're talking like a training plan, reps times sets times weight, total tonnage over time. In a workout program or a plan, you want your total tonnage and our volume to go up. Um, Volume is often said to be the biggest driver of hypertrophy. When we talk about volume, though, and driving hypertrophy, we're talking about effective reps and sets. These effective reps and sets are sets and reps and exercises that are taken to near or absolute failure. Intensity, the percent effort that you have from 0 to maximal 100% effort. Density is intensity with a function of time. For example, if I squat 135 three sets of 10 in 30 minutes, that's, let's say that was really hard for me based off my current skill level. If I take that three sets of 10, but take it from 30 minutes into 10 minutes, right? I've completed the same workout, but in less time, that workout has now become more dense. Lastly, progressive overload. This is the principle that essentially states your workouts need to get harder over time, whether they're more intense, whether you're doing more work, however you are wanting to improve and or acquire more results, you should be progressing that in that way. So essentially, trying to run faster, you need to practice doing more explosive stuff, either in running at faster and higher intensities, doing more volume at a certain intensity, so on and so forth. What is an adaptation? Easiest to find, the body's response to stress. Stressors or stimuli. If we think about like riding the cyclist right here, and if you know cyclists, they go on these long, massive rides, like 30 miles is like a bare minimum. They'd be going like 50 to 100 miles, some of them, right? That's a stressor that your body has to adapt to. Same thing with this woman here doing the Olympic lift, throwing the barbell overhead. Power and strength are stressors that the body has to adapt to. Examples of adaptations, increases in speed and or endurance. So you have your top speed, which is like your 100-meter 40-yard dash. You have your endurance um, slash speed, which is like, how fast you can run a marathon. increase strength and or power. Once again, we talked about Olympic lifting, powerlifting. Olympic lifting, as far as increased power, let's say you power clean 225, later power clean 275, and you're at the same weight, you have become more powerful. Increase strength. That's just lifting a total load. So you back squat 315, then you back squat 375. That would be an increase in strength. The difference between strength and power is strength with a function of time. How fast or how quickly can you move this heavy load? Increase hypertrophy and increase work capacity. Hypertrophy is increase in muscle growth and size, whereas work capacity is more so like conditioning. How much work can you do, how quickly, and for how long? And these are all, once again, examples of adaptations that you can try to get, or try to, that you can train for and or acquire from, once again, your training. Intensity. Your intensity is something I really wanted to harp on because it determines the type of adaptation, right? The it was a coach, I think, who said it to me, and it kind of blew my mind at the time, and I'll never forget it. The sprinter, 100-meter sprinter, and the marathon runner are doing the same thing, just at different intensities. They're both running. However, they're running at very different intensities. The marathon runner, though it might be fast to you or me, if you do not run a marathon, I do not run marathons. So marathon run is going to be super fast to me. If I was to run at the same intensity or run at the same speed as a marathon runner for, I don't know, 2 miles, I'd probably die. I don't even think I'd hold that pace for a mile. But once again, for them, it's a very low intensity. It's easy. It's just work. Now, the sprinter, the 100-meter sprinter, that's all out max speed, max impulse, force in the ground, amortization, like crazy work. Both these people are doing the same thing. They're both running. They're just doing it at different intensities. The marathon runner is at a lower intensity, and the sprinter, 100-meter sprinter, is at a much higher intensity. So I thought that was very interesting. So remember that how intense your training will determine the kind of results you're going to get, whether you want to be more powerful, whether you want to be stronger, whether you want to build muscle, whether you're trying to build work capacity, so on and so forth. But something that should also be taken note of is that volume has a opposite uh, volume functions in direct opposite to intensity, meaning the harder you are working. Sorry, you're the yawn, guys. The harder you are working, the less volume you'll be doing of it. What does that mean? If we take let's say we're doing heavy triples on barbell back squat, and I'm doing that at 80% of my 1RM, I could probably do 5 sets of that. If I do 98% of my 1RM doing as a single, doing 5 sets of that with the same amount of rest that I would be doing those heavy triples would probably put me in a casket. It's too much intensity in with regards to the volume. Essentially, too many attempts, too many reps at that intensity. And obviously, like the intensity versus volume like matters, right? Like for example, the 100-meter dash will take a lot out of you. You'll need a lot of time to recover from a 100-meter dash. The 40-yard dash, not so much, right? The 40-yard dash is literally not half as long. So the time to recover isn't as strenuous, if you will. But yeah, so keep that in mind that the harder you are training, the more rest you will need. And in general, the less work you'll be able to do at that given intensity. Now you can train it over time. You can train yourself to do more work at a given intensity. Once again, this aligns with the principle of progressive overload that we talked about before. However, it's not. You'll never. It will be unlikely, depending on your sport, what you're doing, your activity, your goals, that you'll be able to do the same amount of volume at 90% of your 1R of your 1 rep max and 90% of your overall intensity and effort that you will be able to do at 75% at any given time. Intensity versus rest. So intensity and rest have a ratio together, and you can't outwork your need for rest. I see this all the time where people say essentially like your aerobic capacity essentially improves your ability to recover because all recovery modality is aerobic. So let's say I just ran a 100-meter sprint fast as I could. I did it in 12 seconds because I'm not that fast. 12 seconds probably be fast for me. Let's say I did 12 seconds, guys. Be proud of me. I did 100 meters in 12 seconds. And now I'm breathing, I'm heaving, I'm oof, oof, oof. Um, it's going to take me some time to recover. The version of me that does a little bit more endurance training or aerobic conditioning will be able to recover faster. So let's say if I have to do that again in 2 minutes, the version of me who's more aerobically fit will probably be more recovered and perform better and run slightly faster than the version of me that is less aerobically fit. However, the caveat is A, rest was still needed, and B, does training aerobic capacity detract and or take away from the stimulus of what I'm trying to do, trying to improve my top speed. So something to always take note of is there's this thing called the interference effect, and it doesn't really play a huge role unless you're at the elite level. And what we're focusing on here is, and what I'm trying to talk about is optimization. If you're talking about general purposes in fitness, yes, each and every one of us as human beings should be able to run distance and be able to sprint fast. But if you're trying to be the fastest sprinter, you should not be doing a lot of endurance training. However, there probably is like an off season, preseason where some elite sprinters might do some kind of endurance training once again to improve their own capacity to tolerate their training load as it goes on. But once again, we're not talking a lot because their goal is to just dominate the fast twitch and be like these powerful, super fast, speedy human beings. Know that proper ratio as far as intensity and rest will kind of improve and optimize progress, and an improper ratio will essentially inhibit progress. Let's say you're trying to improve your VO2 max, but you're not resting enough in between bouts of activity. That means you're less likely to hit your target zone. So, for example, improving your VO2 max, often zone five, right? Your heart's pumping really fast, pumping really, really hard. If you don't rest enough, your your body will have a more difficult time trying to get into zone five. You might instead get into zone four, which trains a different adaptation. That's more conditioning, anaerobic slash lactate threshold than it is VO2 max stimulant and adaptation. So we have low intensity activity. We call this like a zone two training. Requires little to no rest in between bouts of activity. So, for example, I whenever I'm doing like a high volume block for rowing, sometimes I'll row for usually if I have the time and I'm trying to recover, because the more you recover in between bouts of activity, the longer you can usually go for, right? So I've been able to hit like, 3 hours um, adding 3 minutes of rest every like 20 minutes or so. However, I've also had to row 3 hours straight just because I didn't have the time for the rest, right? So I did it. Yeah, it sucked, but you could do it. As far as work, usually work for anywhere between 20, 30 minutes. Give yourself between 2 minutes and 1 minute, I'll say 1 minute and 3 minutes of rest, right? And 1 minute and 3 minutes of rest compared to 20, 30 minutes, that's not um that's not that big essentially, or that's a very big difference. Because you're working for 20 minutes, only resting for essentially 1 to 3 minutes, versus let's say if I'm doing completely anaerobic training, where I'm just sprinting hard as I can for 30 seconds, and I give myself between 90 seconds to 3 minutes of rest there. Once again, 30 seconds of work, but resting for 90 seconds to 3 minutes. So essentially the same rest that I would give myself for working for 20 to 30 minutes, I'm getting after 90 or giving after 30 seconds of hard work. So once again, the harder you work, as far as the like of intensity, of percent effort, like the closer you are to maximal 100% effort, the higher rest you will have in comparison to the intensity. At some points in time, depending on what adaptation you're trying to achieve, what sport you're competing in, you will end up and will probably end up resting more than you are working. Like if we look at Olympic lifting, the Olympic lift, like the guy doing the clean and jerk here, that probably took him 30 seconds. Walk, right? Well, if we consider the walk up for that competition, consider the walk up, prep, set up, clean, squat it up, stable, jerk, split stance, land, step, step. Judge calls down, bar drops. That might all take a minute. Then after that, you're going to rest from like 3 to 5. So once again, high intensity, big rest in accompaniment with that. Low intensities, very little rest in comparison with how long you were working. So intensity and resting. So we have hypertrophy, power, VO2 max, conditioning, and endurance. Hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is a stimulant, which is the adaptation of hypertrophy is increased muscle growth and size. So trying to build muscle. When doing that, you actually want to rest as long as possible because hypertrophy requires training close to failure. And failure is very fatiguing, especially if you're doing like a high reps game. Granted, you can do like a low reps game, like somewhere between 3 to 8, and still get great hypertrophy stimulus. But let's say you're doing sets of like 15 because you want an aerobic response. That's when you're breathing hard after like a heavy set. You're like, while you're doing your squats, that's an aerobic response that causes, in which we call system fatigue, which will accompany your, muscle fatigue. Doing that isn't necessarily optimal for your muscle growth, but it does occur and it is an adaptation if you're trying to get it, if you're trying to fatigue your system, if you're trying to be more conditioned while trying to build muscle, for example, trying to do kind of two things at once and not do either one super, super well. You want to rest for as much as possible, which means you might end up resting for 3 to 5 minutes for optimal hypertrophy setting. If you're training to absolute failure, if you're training one rep shy of failure, you probably won't need 3 to 5, probably won't need 5, but maybe like 3 to 4, definitely like 3. However, not everyone has the opportunity to rest between 3 to 5 minutes in between each set, in between each side, right? Like there's 3 to 5 minutes of rest counts if you're doing like Bulgarian split squats. If I do a set of 5 Bulgarian split squats with my right leg, they act optimally resting. I would rest 3 to 5 minutes before doing my left leg, which would take a long time to finish a workout, right? So what studies have shown is you can get some pretty good results resting for 2 minutes for pressure, as long as once again you're not hitting absolute failure, but stopping 1 to 3 reps shy of failure. Now let's talk power. Power. Once again, strength with a function of time. How fast can you lift heavy load? How fast can you run? How much force can you transmit to the ground? So on and so forth. Power. Um, yes, it's very type 2 fiber dominant, kind of like hypertrophy, which means these muscle fibers fatigue very quickly and they take a long time to recover. That energy system for power takes more time to recover. And so you're going to want bigger rest there. Probably 3 to 5 minutes in between the set, depending on what you're doing. So, like for example, a clean and jerk, that's like 2 movements of explosive power. You're probably going to want like 3 to 5 minutes of rest there, depending if you're doing like heavy singles or like some volume work. It will vary. But for like near maximal efforts, definitely more rest associated with that. That will be different for depth drop jumps and plyos and things like that because there's less load associated with that and less range of motion associated with that. But in general, higher rest for power. VO2 max, that's like intense aerobic training. When you're doing something like that, what you should um, envision is with regards to your how hard your effort is, it also depends on how long you're working for. So, for example, one of the most popular VO2 max workouts is four by 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off, right? There's a lot of research around that workout for some reason and how good it is for stimulating VO2 max improvement. I don't know why that workout does so well. That's not there's other workouts that you can do stimulate your VO2 max. I just know that was very popular. That's an equal rest to work ratio, right? Currently on my training plan with me and my coach, what we're doing is I have a 3 minutes on, 6 minutes off. I'm working for one less minute, which means I'm pushing harder. So then we've added time to my rest, more than a minute to my rest, just to make sure I can recover in between the bouts. If we're trying to get me better conditioned in a specific zone or specific time, I would shorten that rest. But because I'm worried about maximum output, top speed kind of thing, more rest associated with that. So my work to rest is actually doubled versus 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off, the work to rest is equal. Because once again, by taking a minute off, because imagine if you're going all out, taking away 1 minute of work is huge. And if you don't believe me, you should try rowing a 2,000 meter erg and then met whatever your time is, do it again, but row for less than take off like a minute of time for completion. You'll be able to go a lot harder, a lot faster. You'll be impressed. Next, we have conditioning. This is once again strength endurance. How long and how strong can you be for how long? Workouts like this are often done like 75, 85, even 90%, up to caps out at 90% as far as like your maximal effort. Like you're working hard and it requires rest, but the rest isn't short because your rest is the rest is shorter. So for example, I had a conditioning workout yesterday where I ran for 20 minutes straight, had a 5 minute rest, and then I ran 20 minutes hard again. And it wasn't zone two, it was strictly zone four, right? And then it was done. So technically between two bouts of 20 minutes, yes, I rested longer than I would have for my aerobic stuff. But in comparison to burning for 20 minutes and only having like 3 to 5 minutes of rest, it's a lot shorter, a lot more difficult, a lot harder to clear that lactate and things like that. Endurance, once again, shorter rest is better because you're trying to stay and maximize time in a specific zone. Nutrition coaching, if you're trying to level up your nutrition game, if you're trying to make a transformation like this one, definitely scan this barcode. We'll see if we can get you some results like my 90-day transformation right here. I do not recommend staying as lean as I was in that picture. That was a one-time photo thing that I do not like to repeat as it doesn't feel good to be that lean, for me at least. But if you want the tools and skills necessary to make this transformation, once again, scan that barcode. I'd love to help you do that. Thank you for hanging out with me on the Quadcast. Hopefully, you enjoyed this presentation. If you have questions, comments, concerns about any information regarding intensity, adaptation, and rest, throw them in the comments, and I'd love to answer them for you. I'll see you in the next episode of the Quadcast. Later.